on the meeting. We're going to do a continuation of a couple weeks ago. Perla, could you please call the roll?
Yes, good afternoon. Welcome to the February 20th Urban Development Review Board meeting. My name is Perla Gonzalez from City Planning, City of Miami Planning Department, Planning and Zoning, and I'm calling roll. Mr. Robert Behar.
Here.
Mr. Dean Lewis. Here. Mr. Willie Bermejo. Mr. Robin Bosco is not coming. He asked me to tell everybody. Mr. Neil Hall.
Here.
Mr. Gerald Marston.
Here.
Mr. Fidel Perez.
Here.
Mr. Jesus Permuy is not coming, and Mr. Tony Samsis is not coming either. So we have quorum, 3 is quorum. We are presenting today one item, is the continuation from the meeting on February 4. The project was Midtown Miami Walmart, located at 3055 North Miami Avenue. It was deferred to today's meeting, and with some conditions that I'm going to read. What they presented, what the applicants presented, is the revision to these conditions to the project. So I'm reading the I'm reading the conditions. Number 1, further study the retail liner along Midtown Boulevard, particularly the northeast 31st Street elevation abutting the Walmart structure. Second, pursuant to section 627.1.12a, all ground level space designed for pedestrian-oriented uses shall have external entrances directly accessible from public sidewalk space. At least one external entrance shall be located along the frontage of the primary street or on the corner intersection of the primary street and any other street. Additionally, each building use, such as retail store with cafe or restaurant, shall have separate entrances. Even though the project provides a main entrance at the intersection of North Miami Avenue and Northeast 31st Street, no other entrances are proposed to allow pedestrian access from the street public sidewalk into the Walmart retail area along North Miami Avenue. Third condition, comply with SD 27.2 design standards, 3 building tops and roof standards, and intent 7.1 building top, 7.2 garage roof, 7.3 roof tops. 4, comply with public works standards since both driveways approaches exceed the maximum allowable width of 40 feet. 5, further study the second level driveway maneuverability. 6, provide additional shade trees to the existing palm plantings within the public right-of-way. These were the conditions that the board stated, and now the applicant can present.
Good afternoon. My name is Alfredo Gonzalez. I'm an attorney with Genovese, Joblove, and Batista, and I'm here on behalf of Walmart on this Class 2 application.
Excuse me 1 second.
Yes.
Perla, for the record, let's show that Mr. Bermejo just arrived.
Yes, thank you.
My offices are located at 100 Southeast 2nd Street, 44th floor. We are pleased to present to you this unique project, and I wanted first of all to give you a little bit of a background of where we are. This is a project that where we have worked diligently with your staff and with the public in order to bring you a unique, one-of-a-kind Walmart. The proposed project is consistent with the master plan for this particular site and for the zoning on the site. The project is zoned under the SD 27.2 district, which is an independent district from Miami 21, and it in fact has its own rules and requirements and applies 11,000 as well. In fact, the zoning on this property allows for specifically this type of use, a big box retail facility. We heard your comments last week, and we've gathered our entire project team, and we are here to address each one of those comments. I will point out that in terms of the public works matter, we've procured a waiver for the driveways from Public Works, so that's something new and satisfies that requirement. We have here with us Robert Maynard from Gensler, who's an architect. He's going to go through each one of the points that you brought out at the last meeting and discuss with you the changes we've made. Richard Perez, an attorney with Holland & Knight, and Soria Jafar will present the Midtown development, or the part of the project that faces Midtown. Our proposal meets or exceeds all of the requirements of the code of the City of Miami and the design guidelines. We continue to be open and willing to work with the city. Lastly, we would point out to you that this project is on the southernmost part of Midtown. So consequently, it's divided from the rest of Midtown by a public garage. So you need something that will activate people who come there, and I think Walmart is the perfect anchor tenant to do that. We're hoping you agree. We think that the intent of SD 27 was exactly what we're bringing to that area, to promote 24-hour retail activities and to promote pedestrian continuity and traffic. We hope that you can recommend our project, and now we'll bring Robert Maynard to address you technically.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Maynard with Gensler, the architect on the Walmart project. The first condition that was stated was to further study the elevation along Northeast 31st, specifically where the shops of Midtown Boulevard intersect with the Walmart portion. So if you would go to sheet A200, and I will pull that up on the screen. You can see at the left-hand side of the Northeast 31st elevation, we've revisited and clarified the extent to which the buildings are separated. The Midtown shops are roughly 2 feet shorter in height than the Walmart portion. The condition at which we're separating the two projects is similar to how the Walmart project is terminated on North Miami Avenue. The parking entrance provides a nice break, and so the elevation of the Midtown shops, the colonnades, terminate at the parking entry. I believe that Surya may have some zoomed in elevations as well in the back. Okay, the last sheet of the liner shops portion shows an enlarged intersection of the Northeast 31st elevation at the left-hand side. That would be the north and south elevation sheet of the Ziskovich package. So you could see how the colonnade of the Midtown shops extends past to screen and blend in to the elevation of the Walmart shop behind it. The curtain wall, glass, and metal panel within the curtain wall system extends past and is actually in front of the Walmart building, which runs to the left of column G in that elevation. So as you're walking down and you are looking through the glass, you can see portions of the elevation of the Walmart building under that colonnade. Again, you can see the elevation separation at the top of that to show you that the separate buildings to help break up that elevation, it's stepped down at the north shop, the shops at Midtown Boulevard. To the right is how the elevation in the shops on Midtown Boulevard terminates on the south part of the property. It wraps around from Midtown Boulevard and extends in to the back portion that fronts the adjacent property for the Walmart project. The next item for consideration was pedestrian entry along North Miami Boulevard. So if you would go to sheet pardon me, A0201 for enlarged elevations of the North Miami side. So taking your comment under consideration, we revisited the entry on entry points along North Miami Boulevard, North Miami Avenue, pardon me. So the Vision Center now has a designated separate entry, which occurs at mid-block of North Miami Boulevard, or Avenue, sorry. And so we have an enlarged axon view of that entry with separate signage under the colonnade and near the plaza break at mid-block. Along with this entry, it allowed us the opportunity to increase the glazing views into the store. So now, if you look at sheet A0101A with the breakdowns of glazing, you can see that we are now providing 53% glazing views into the store, and that is on top of the requirements of glazing for North Miami Avenue. We're required to have 225 feet of glazing or display. That's 50% of the frontage. The project provides 251 feet 6 inches, which is exceeding the requirements by 26 feet 6 inches. Of that 251 feet 6 inches, we are providing 53% of that glass actually viewing into the store. So now as pedestrians are traversing North Miami Avenue, there are views into retail shops. The last comment that I will address is complying with the rooftop parking. That will be on sheet A0103. Oops. We are continuing to work with staff on the extent of landscaping and the types of plantings that will occur up there, but we've revisited the coloring and the branding at the entry and having the parking spots differentiated from the rest of the pedestrian area. So we are providing stamped and stained concrete at all pedestrian areas to help designate the portions where vehicles are not going to be allowed, as well as the extent of landscaping at the islands, again, to help call out the locations of parking. And so, as I stated, we're continuing to work with staff on the types of plantings that we're going to provide on the parking deck. Now, Greg Wilfong with Kimlee Horn will address some of the other comments. Thank you.
Do you want to go through the maneuverability too with your elevations?
No, we'll just go with the conditions.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Greg Wilfong with Kimlee Horn and Associates. Office is located in Vero Beach, Florida. Starting with condition number 4, we were able to obtain a waiver from Public Works Department for the driveway widths, and I don't know if you have a copy of it, but planning does have a copy of that. If you need it, I have copies here if you need it. The next comment was regarding the shade trees along within the public right-of-way. And what we've done from last time, if you go to sheet 3, let me go to the slide here. Previously, working with staff, we opted to relocate all of the trees along Northeast 31st Street to a local public park. And after discussing that with staff from the last submittal, we decided, well, let's go ahead and move the material in the vicinity of the project. So we ended up doing is we took the 24 trees located along 31st Street, some of which are palm trees and some of which are shade trees. We actually moved all of them along North Miami Avenue, so it looks very nice when we're done. Let me go ahead and show you actually. Here's a copy of the landscaping plan, sheet L1. As you can see along North Miami Avenue, we've activated the street with quite a few benches, trash containers, and quite a few trees within both the public right-of-way and along the 9-foot buffer along North Miami Avenue. We've also prepared a quick rendering kind of showing what it'll look like once the relocations take place and some new material is added along North Miami Avenue. As you can see here, it has quite a bit of canopy, shade trees along the frontage and also palm trees. There's currently existing royal palms along the street, which we're not going to touch. Those will stay there. And there's also cassias that are spaced at the parking stalls along North Miami Avenue. So as you can see here, there's quite a bit of activity along the street level, along North Miami Avenue. As far as Midtown Miami, these slides here, just to kind of help clarify, along Midtown Boulevard, we're actually showing a picture here of 2 royals and in the middle an oak tree. So we're not displacing any of the trees along Midtown. We're basically keeping those intact, and there's currently oak trees roughly every 40 feet down Midtown Boulevard, and then there's quite a few royals along Midtown. So we're not basically impacting the trees along Midtown. Thank you.
The next condition that we addressed was maneuverability on the second level loading area. So if you look at sheet A0102A, we've provided a 3D view to give you a better sense of the section through the main parking ramp and how loading trucks will access the second level loading area for the shops on Midtown Boulevard. As you can see, we're going to provide clearances of 12 feet at the major pinch points along that ramp. And towards the bottom with the section, you can see the vehicle meets within those clearances. We're also providing an overhead coiling door to screen the loading area from the rest of the parking. So as loading trucks come up to the second level, they will pull forward, then the door will open. That way they are not waiting on the ramp for doors to open and access loading areas. Then they'll back in, door will close, deliveries will be made, and then once done, it'll raise up again for them to exit. The maneuvering of the truck is shown on the plans to the right. The top is how the service trucks enter in, and the bottom is the exit maneuvering.
Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate for us to ask questions related to these at this time, or you want to wait until the
I wanted
presentation?
to finish your presentation.
Thank you.
And then we'll ask them the questions.
Mr. Richard Perez will address the board.
My name is Richard Perez with Holland and Knight, 701 Brickell Avenue, represent Midtown Opportunities. And I think we spoke briefly the last time, but I thought it important to reiterate some of the points that we made in the last meeting and let you know, we heard what you said about the transition. And we heard what you said about making sure that these buildings, you know, even though they're distinct, that they work together and they work in a manner that makes sense. But I wanted to, again, give you some context before Surya gets into the details of what it is as to why we got here. And I think it was something that was certainly missing at the front end of the presentation the last time. And I think my client, Midtown Opportunities, which owns all of the remaining undeveloped parcels in Midtown, but for the piece where Walmart is coming, it's been a long road for us. We started and have been in opposition of the Walmart project for a good amount of time. We came to the realization at some point that Walmart's coming. And so we asked ourselves, what is it, if Walmart is coming, what is it that we need to make sure that the character, especially along Midtown Boulevard, remains, and that it has as little impact along Midtown Boulevard as possible in terms of where our vision of Midtown Boulevard is. And so we had 4 primary goals in mind as we proceeded along in starting our discussions with Walmart. The first goal is that we didn't want Midtown Boulevard to be the back end of a big box retail. We didn't want it to sort of have that same look and feel. We wanted something distinct. So our second goal was that we wanted to make sure that we activated the ground floor, that we made this as pedestrian friendly as possible, and that it be sort of for mom and pop retail, not big box retail, but small stores that really activated the pedestrian nature of what we think Midtown Boulevard will and can be. The third point is it needed to be architecturally distinct in the sense that right now, this is a very separated piece from the rest of Midtown. There's a parking garage, empty lots around it. It needed to be a visual attraction, something that attracted people to go there, something that was unique. And fourth, we wanted something that paid homage to the site, that wasn't just something that you could find anywhere else, but something that really spoke to the context of where it was and where we want it to be. And so that design is really a homage to what it was, which was a place where it was the trains used to drop off and freight, and so really a lot of the look is that. And we truly believe that that this design has met all 4 of those goals. But we heard you, and Surya is here to address specifically. I know that the architect from Gensler already addressed some of it, but Surya is here to address specifically some of your other issues in terms of that transition. Well, she says that they did a good job, and she has nothing to add. So with that, I'll hand it back to Al.
Well, that's our presentation.
Mr. Gonzalez, before you step down, I got a question. Are you seeking any variances that we are not made aware of? Are you seeking anything in particular?
None at all, sir. We're building the project in accordance with code requirements and guidelines, with one exception. The public works gave a waiver for the size of the entrance on the loading.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up to the board. Neil, you want to start?
Mr. Chair, do we want to not hear from the public, invite the public first before we comment? So long as you frame the guidelines.
Yeah, and remember, this is
a lot of
public
intelligent people here.
meeting, not a public hearing. I just don't want to, I could open it up, but I don't want to give a lot of time because this is not the occasion for that. The next meeting that we'll go to, they will have the opportunity to express their opinions. This is just a public meeting. Any consensus to open it up to the public?
How many people want to speak? Only one?
All right.
I don't have a
In the
problem.
case, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Grant Stern. I live at 1750 North Bayshore Drive, and I've got some materials for you gentlemen. I know it's unusual to have a member of the public speak at these hearings, so I'll try to keep my remarks brief. I'd like to applaud Gensler and Kimlee Horn on a fine presentation. They'll come in a lot of handy when they're making their major use special permit application down the road. The plans as submitted require a variance, and under the code of Midtown Miami, that variance requires a major use special permit, There are two main ingredients that are wrong with their plan, simply against the code of Midtown Miami. First of all, there are no active uses in the liner of their parking garages. The second floor of their Miami Avenue elevation includes nothing but facade. Now, Midtown Miami was designed with smart growth in mind, and the reason is they wanted to activate all the levels of Midtown Miami and avoid faceless, soulless canyons belching smoke and exhaust from parking garages. In addition, the design guidelines call for a 10-foot setback on 31st Street. If you'll turn to the third page of your packet. I'm reading from the SD 27.2 Design Standards, page 19. Those design standards call for bulb outs for flora and fauna. They call for 2 street lanes and 2 lanes of on-street parking. That's the second major flaw. None of that is present in the plan presented by Walmart. They intend to have 3 flat travel lanes with pedestrian refuges. Again, this runs counter to the pedestrian nature of the Midtown Miami Master Plan. The parallel parking area is required. To change that parallel parking area would require a major use special permit and a public hearing. Let's see. Additionally, well, really that's the heart of our matter. They're asking for 2 variances, but the City of Miami Planning Department isn't interested in considering those variances as criteria for a major use special permit, and instead they're proceeding with the special permit application, the Class 2 application. It is my opinion that the city should deny the special Class 2 permit application on the grounds that the 2 submitted plans have required variances. They're applying for the wrong permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Pearl, I got a question, or have we had the legal department looked at the application to assure that there is no variances required?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Carmen Sanchez, Assistant Director, Planning and Zoning. I did not get your full question.
Have we confirmed with the legal department to assure that there's no variance required in this application?
Thank you. Variance, first of all, we have to look to see if in fact a variance will be required, and if we have any doubt, we would turn to our legal department for clarification. Okay. At this point,
but based on your opinion, there's no variances required?
As it relates to the liners, no, but we will gladly take any concerns that anyone has back to our director for further review.
Great. Good enough. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could point out, in the documentation that Mr. Stern handed out on the parallel parking, it says that a row of parallel parking in small, medium truck loading area is recommended. It's not mandatory. Your code also allows for the elimination of parking stalls with a payment, and of course, in a liner space, we've worked with staff, and they don't believe it.
Okay. Neil?
I have one question having to do with North Miami Avenue. When one look at the north side of from 31st to 36, there's a setback from the street to the parking garage on most of the buildings, from Target to I guess what's the other street, building, of 85 feet. And I don't see that happening on Walmart. I wanted to know whether or not there was a variance granted to allow that setback to be where it is at this time.
On the elevation or the plan?
On the face of the parking for North Miami Avenue, it's right now in line with the shop of Walmart.
That's a good question, and we work with staff on that question. The reason we don't need a variance is because that section, if you have liner uses, like the facade and the mechanical equipment, you don't need it. That applies only if you don't have liner uses, and the active ingredient of it is for the first floor.
I thought it was for the purpose of setting back the parking structure.
You're correct, but it only applies in the eventuality that you're looking at the ground floor. If you're looking at the second floor, what it allows for.
If you'll pardon me.
Let him finish, please.
Yeah, your requirement only applies when there isn't a liner provided, which we have provided in the second floor by the facade and the types of mechanical equipment that we're provided there. So that doesn't apply. In fact, let me just read to you from the code section, because it will make things a lot easier. Yeah, it's 212. Yeah, I'm looking for it. I have it here, but yes, it's section 627.212 of the Miami Code, and it reads that liner uses are generally required on parking garages that front primary streets, North Miami.
Right.
When required, ground level parking facilities must be lined with active uses. Upper level facilities that do not incorporate liner uses shall be set back. Liner uses are defined in the code as building uses that serve to conceal uses such as parking garages and service area. That is the facade and the mechanical equipment areas. I have the sections if you would like.
Fair enough. Thank you. You may proceed.
All right, let's go on, Fidel.
Yeah, I have a question. The glazing on the liner on the second floor is, the glazing is for the Walmart store? Or what use is inside of that second story?
So I'm confused by the question. When looking at the elevation, the windows shown on the second floor,
That's correct.
that's providing the screening for the parking behind.
Only for the parking? How about on the other street? On North Miami is also for parking?
Yes,
So all the glazing on the second floor is for parking?
yes.
Okay.
Dean, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to start off with, I compliment thus far Walmart coming together with a talented team and the challenge of interurbanizing their suburban big box architecture. And it's refreshing. If we could just work it out and weave it together to its ideal where we're all there, would be wonderful. My concern is that with the SD 27 and the Assistant Planning Director's opinion that they're not sure whether variances are required yet, concerns me and wants me to ask a little deeper on the question of the active liners. Where does it specify? We're fronting, we have 3 right-of-ways here. Where does it specify the degree of liner, percentage of street frontage, how many facades as we do elsewhere in Miami 21 code today? I'm sure that's articulated in SD 27. And then whether or not it has to be 1-story or 2-story, because remember, the majority of Midtown's liner retail is 2-story. Now, it's not retail up there, but it is eyes on the street and it's active. And there is a little setback to it. And I don't quite see that successfully articulated here yet. And so there's basically 2.5 questions. If you could respond to that, that'd be great.
Okay, so the first question was, I'm sorry.
I'm concerned about whether or not there's a variance required, and they're not sure yet. This goes under secondary review, right? We're going to take a
But
position.
if we have a concern, we'll mandate them to look into it. But
Right.
as of now, there's
Okay.
no.
There is no concern. We have no concern at this point. Staff doesn't have a concern, and I think we've made that point in the last meeting. You were not present.
Yeah,
But
okay.
certainly, if the board has a concern, we will take it back to the director for further review. But
Okay.
at this point, we don't have one.
And then how many, have they complied with the minimum standard for linear liner active uses in their project?
The ground floor, which is what's required, yes, they have. We feel that they have.
Because I recall it should be on at least two right-of-ways out of the 3,
They have,
active liner.
they do have, I believe, on the Walmart side, not on the Midtown Boulevard side. They do have some active uses. So if you allow him, I'm sure that he will be able to provide that
Yeah.
detail.
In your opinion, is it compliant with current zoning?
We
in that
continue to
respect?
review the project, so it's not whether it's my opinion or not. We continue to review the project, and so far with what they have presented, we're comfortable with what they have presented. Again, it's a work in progress. We still would want to see additional refinements and to take into consideration any comments that this board may provide. But up to now, we're fine with what they have presented, with refinements that we have been discussing over time.
They illustrate on page 8.01-01A a percentage of glass on the ground floor. According to this information, they're exceeding the required amount of linear glass area. Is that?
Well, it's an old adage, we look at it, but we verify it. We'll take their comments under advisement, but we will go back and verify that, in fact, that still meets the code. It is what they have on paper. We will certainly take them at their word, but we will go back and look at measure drawings to make sure that they're compliant before we actually issue any type of final permit.
If you go to sheet 01, A0101B, that shows the percentages required for active, which is different than the glazing requirements. So along Northeast 31st Street, we're required 30% active uses. Which would have us at 145 feet, 6 inches. We are at 147 feet. So we exceed the requirement on Northeast 31st Street. On North Miami, we're required 65%, which is 292 feet, 6 inches. And we exceed that in providing 299 feet.
This is glass, though.
Yeah,
It's not active.
Well, the first floor plan's the glass. The sheet prior is the glazing requirements. This sheet's the active requirements, which just states that you have to provide retail uses, functions that promote pedestrian activity.
Okay, with that in mind, and right on the middle of the building, just to the south of the stairs.
Yes.
And I guess to the north of the Vision Center. What is that use there?
That outdoor area?
No, it's not an outdoor, it's an indoor, immediately to the north of the Vision Center. What is that space?
That's a view in, that's the site to store delivery area.
Back of house.
No, that's, if you order a product on their website and go to the store and pick it up, that's the counter that you would go to. So we have views into that counter to also help.
Street access or no?
Pardon me?
I don't see, is there street access? to
There's
that?
not street access to that.
Yeah.
That's a part of the general merchandising. So we provide views in there, which also allows for additional views into that plaza area. There was some concern about having visibility into the bump in at mid-block on the sidewalk.
Okay, so are you, I know a very talented group that you are you comfortable with the fact that your active liner's only 1 story as opposed to 2, given the scale of the bulk of the building
Well, in
and
the
the
code-
majority of Midtown being two-story liner?
Well, in the code, it says active uses are for ground level parking. Our parking's not on ground level. We have retail on ground level. So I am comfortable with that.
Therefore, you would want the active liner at the garage level on the second floor, I would think, like we did elsewhere. That's just my opinion.
That's not how the code's written, though. It would say active uses on...
This is special area plan, and I'm just asking you, do you not feel it's reversed in a way? That's one, and then the last question is, I see that you basically have most of your back of house along North Miami Avenue, one of which you just recently described, the return pickup. And I think it would be ideal, and I recall this was asked in the previous meeting, to move this to the south on your internal plan, space plan. Is there any reason why that couldn't happen, and then allow the North Miami Avenue facade become more pedestrian activated?
Well, that's the location of our main vertical circulation up to the parking level. So we are grouping all of the mechanical, the plumbing, everything within that area.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
South alley pedestrian, that's perfect for all your back of house stuff.
But it's also a function of the relationship with, just to the east of that is the checkout area. So we need to have areas that are not public access for managers to sit near checkout. And so it's a function of the store as well to the east of where that back of house space is.
That pretty much is my...
Okay. Jerry?
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Number one, I want to thank you for clarifying the fact that the plans that we got the last time didn't show trees that were existing. And, you know, it gives me some pause at times to look at elevations when there are, in fact, trees there. I have a question about the loading dock area for the liner buildings. And in my reading of the code, number one, I've heard this word bread truck, okay, that the bread truck is going to provide the service area. And since I live in Coconut Grove and I go by Commodore Plaza and, you know, on a daily basis, seems to me that virtually every one of those restaurants that are on Commodore Plaza and are on Main Highway are serviced by trucks that are articulated, and they're kind of in the 40 to 50 foot range. Even the guy who delivers the tomatoes to Green Streets, okay? It's all he delivers is tomatoes. He's in an articulated truck. My understanding of the code is that the code requires a loading zone of 55 feet deep, 12 feet by 55. I don't think that the loading dock that you are showing for the liner building at the moment hits that dimension. If it does, the truck would never be able to turn around. You couldn't turn around a 50 or 55 foot truck in that area. And so I'm really concerned that what's going to happen here is that we're going to have servicing for those restaurants uses, okay, are going to be on the street as opposed to in the loading dock.
So we are only required to have 3 loading berths, which our first floor plan, we're providing 4.
I'm not talking about the Walmart, I'm talking about the liner buildings. Okay, so the liner building should be required to have a loading area by code, okay, which would be 12 feet by 55 feet, because you have a low square footage retail space use. And then I don't believe your service area that you're showing today is in fact in that size range. And you're also showing maneuverability of the trucks to be able to come drive in a forward direction, then turn around and go back down the driveway. And a 50-foot truck is not going to make that movement. And I'm convinced as I'm looking at Main Highway and Commodore Plaza in downtown Coconut Grove and my visits to South Miami, that these small restaurants and shops are not serviced by trucks that are quote-unquote bread trucks, that they're serviced by articulated vehicles. And they're going to end up in the street because there's not enough room to get them up into that top thing.
The 30-foot. Yeah. The truck that we are basing this on is 30 feet in length, 12 feet in height. For off-street loading, the requirements for non-residential uses, berth minimum to be 12 feet by 55 feet in height.
There you go. Thank you. You just answered the question.
But
It's not a bread truck.
For non-residential uses, up to 25,000 square feet.
Sounds like
Between
you.
25,000 square feet and 50,000 square feet, only one berth is required.
12 by 55.
Yeah, they don't quite qualify for the van berth. They're a little over.
Yeah, I think the liner space is a separate parcel, and we are providing the required number of berths under the code. Now, in terms of the...
You're supplying the required number of berths for the Walmart.
Right.
Not questioning that.
Right.
It's the loading berth for the liner spaces, which if I am, in my reading of the code says it's a 12 by 55 foot space.
Right.
And you don't have that.
If I could address the matter, my name is Javier Fernandez with Akerman Senterfitt. I'm here on behalf of the property owner, DDR. With respect to standing to right, in terms of the standard berth size, it is 12 by 55. You are absolutely 100% right. However, the requirement in this district begins when you exceed 25,000 square feet of retail. We are below that threshold in this instance. So you're required to provide a berth of that size if you have retail between 25,000 and 55,000 square feet. Now, acknowledging the fact there's likely to be deliveries to that site, we have provided a loading dock, what we think of commensurate size, to provide for service delivery to those particular liner uses. So that's why there's a modified berth, not required, but still provided.
Willie?
Mr. Chairman, I feel like a violin, and I'm being played. I totally concur with my colleague, with Jerry, and his observations that the loading dock did not work before, and it doesn't work now. This applicant took it upon himself to do what I've never seen in the history of the city, is to create a portion of a building, an element, and convert it into its own separate application for their own purposes. But now, when it's not convenient, they want to consider the entire building as one. You can't really have it both ways. Let me get to the big issue. Last time I asked a question of staff, I got a response from staff here. And again, I hate to say this because I love staff, and I want you all to keep coming back to our Christmas party, and to have never an exception or reason not to. But I felt uncomfortable enough and curious enough to go back and do, some research, which then I communicated with staff. And after reading the code clearly, I have even stronger opinion that the application before us does not comply with Miami 21 for Midtown Boulevard and North Miami, both. The code clearly states, and for the record, I would like to, if I may, read it. It's not a long section, but it's section 627.2.12, subparagraph 3. And it says, when required, ground level parking facilities must be lined with active uses, which they have. And it further goes to say, upper level parking facilities that do not incorporate liner uses shall be set back no less than 85 feet and shall not exceed height of 50 feet. Now, what that basically is saying is that if you're not providing the setback, which they're not, then your upper level parking garages shall have liner uses, not decorative architecture, but liner uses, that is active space, which we don't have. So, and I realize that you introduced a caveat that staff will continue to review the application and consider it, but I would suggest that unless I'm reading this wrong, and I know I'm not a Native American, I was born in Cuba and I am a citizen. Maybe I'm not reading correctly, but I think I am. If I'm incorrect, then, you know, the record later can reflect that I was incorrect in my opinion. But I think that what I'm pointing out is a very important aspect. Now, does this mean that this project will not go forward? No, they can go back and correct it. But what I'm seeing here, Mr. Chairman, is something that kind of bothers me, is that when we highlight an issue, the issue's not really addressed head-on. If there was an issue with the driveways, they obtain a waiver. If there was an issue with the amount of active space in North Miami, which could have been easily been addressed in good faith by taking bathrooms that could be towards the interior of the store to really activate that. What we're given instead is kind of a hodgepodge of how many linear feet of glass. I can show you thousands of buildings that are all glass, and you have dead streetscapes, because that glass doesn't mean that the streetscape comes alive by no stretch of the imagination. So I'm bothered with that. I think that they have tried to address the issue of how the two architectural themes come together, so I commend them on addressing that and more clarifying the issue of the landscaping, which was one of Jerry's comments last time. But, you know, the parking ramp, they have to fix it because it doesn't work, it doesn't comply with respect to the storage for the liner uses. I don't think there's been a real attempt at addressing our concerns in North Miami, and they're, in my opinion, in a clear violation that can be corrected either by introducing faithfully liner uses on the second and third level of the parking garages on both sides. And maybe I missed something, but I really did not see how they addressed the issue of the rooftop parking in terms of, you know, the buildings nearby as you look down on this sea of parking.
Correct.
I mean, I thought we were going to see some trellises or a fabric material that introduced that at nighttime could be lit. You know, there's nothing. It's just, we're just seeing some planters in the island. So I know they're coming back here. They came back here. They were maybe delayed less than a month. But I'm not ready to approve this based on the three things. And for me, the important one is the liner uses, because it goes at the heart of the spirit of Midtown. And I think what the original authors intended, which is not a mystery. It's in writing. It went through a bunch of public review and dialogue.
And that's why the rest of Midtown does have the second level liner instead of the 85-foot setback.
So those are my issues. If there's a vote today, I'll be voting no and against the application for those, unless there's some commitment from the applicant that they will correct and remedy, but in good spirit, not like, well, I'm going to remedy it by getting a waiver. That's not, to me, that's not a remedy. Maybe a remedy for them, but it's not a remedy, I mean, for me sitting here.
You know, I'm not a violin, but I feel like I'm being played with. I agree with you there. I think that we gave them some suggestion, recommendation. They came back and they just gave us, fed us with a little bit of teaser. They incorporated the Vision Center and one entrance along Miami Avenue, but yet they made no real attempt to move the bathrooms and the back of houses to the south, which could easily be done. I don't have a problem with your vertical circulation because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, that's an active vertical element that I feel fine with it. The rooftop, I don't think you have made an attempt to do anything there. A couple little planters, which don't say much. And the liner, I not only on Midtown Boulevard, but in my opinion on Miami Avenue. You know, there's nothing, just, you know, there's a spandrel glass on the second floor of the Miami Avenue. Just to, you know, again, as a teaser, we got something, but I don't think that, in my opinion, you're really complying with the intent of the code. That being said, you know, I think that the board is if we're ready to make a motion and let's take a vote on it.
Let me make one comment. I think it's obvious, the comments you're getting from the board and their ballot comments. But I also think this is an important project for Midtown. And I think they should be given an opportunity to go back and revisit the comments again and see if they can pick up what was said here today and bring it back. Also, I think that we should get some of these comments reviewed by staff and maybe have recommendations for them to come back to us and tell us.
Mr. Perez, keep in mind that we were here 2 weeks ago. And we gave them the same, unless I'm wrong, I think that Mr. Hall, Mr. Bermejo, besides we were here, we gave them those comments.
No, and unfortunately, I was not here, so I'm not, I'm not to say what happened in that meeting, but I do think this is an important project for Midtown, unless you see it another way.
I think it's an important project for the city in general.
Yeah.
Okay?
So I think that they should be given the opportunity of come back again.
Mr. Chair.
If I may address, Mr. Bermejo had an issue, and I think it's an important issue.
May I make
Yes, sir.
before you, may I make just a comment? I have no problem personally, Fidel, if they come back as many times as staff wants them to come back. I agree it's a very important project for the city and for the area. And if they're willing to come back in 30 days or in 60 days or not, however long they need, I'll be even willing to come back for a special meeting. I believe that is that important. But I really believe that we will be remiss if we don't, staff is doing their best in doing their part. And I think we would be remiss if we don't highlight the things that we see as not being correct or being in violation of the code. And I, for one, just because I voiced my concerns doesn't mean that I'm trying to stop or delay the project. I just want to make sure that it's done right. And frankly, in my heart, they have two good architectural firms. When I see things that are not being done right, but you have good professionals working, it usually tells you something as to where things are coming from. And they're usually trickling down from the top. So if we don't send a message here today, who will?
Mr. Chair, that is something that bothers me also, because the code is very, very straightforward, and planning department reads just as well as we do. To allow the liner not to comply with says something to me that either the planning department either give a variance or it was missed. So,
If I may,
yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I want to read into the record exactly what it says in the SD 27, so that we can perhaps move forward with this. And this would be for active uses. The principal component of SD 27 district is ground floor active uses, which promote pedestrian activity. An active use is any use that provides a public entrance from the street with an interior use that serves the general public. This may include retail, office, educational facilities, entertainment, and live work. A liner use. Building uses that serve to conceal uses such as parking garages, service areas. When liner uses contain ground floor space, such space shall be designated to accommodate retail and other uses that promote pedestrian traffic and shall have entrances directly accessible from the public sidewalk or open spaces. This is not a ground floor use. Definitions, SD 27 design standards. Liner uses, storefronts and building fronts that conceal a larger use from view, such as parking garage. This is why we feel that the solution that they have provided is consistent with the SD 27. If you go by Midtown and you look at the target, you will see that, in fact, They opted not the target, but the parking that services the target. You will see that that 85-foot setback exists, but it's open. There's nothing other than the railing that prevents the car from going forward. They have provided the 85-foot setback because there's nothing there. There is no liner, excuse me, sir? There's no liner use. So perfectly acceptable.
Correct.
The liner use does not have to be active if it's not on the second floor. It could just be an articulated building facade, which I think is what Mr. Javier has provided and has designed. That is what we're going for. Do we understand liner uses to be something different in Miami 21? Absolutely. But we have to be very, very careful that Miami 21 is not at play here. What governs this project is the SD 27.2 guidelines. And clearly, liner uses are building fronts. And I believe that Perla has provided copies to the members of the board if you would like to refer to that. So I don't think that staff has missed it. Absolutely not. We had actually a very good discussion with the applicants about that. And in fact, we realized that it's a liner to the second story. It's not necessarily an active use. That's reserved for the ground floor.
May I comment?
Yeah, could we?
Yes.
The code addresses the liner use on the ground floor level,
Right.
specifying that it must be retail.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere does it say that the liner use on the upper levels are anything but habitable space. The distinction it's making is that the idea was that on the second and third level, you could have residential, you could have office, you could have a use. A facade is not a use.
Exactly.
A
Absolutely.
use means an activity.
Absolutely.
A habitable activity. And the code, in my opinion, is very clear when it describes parking garages. It says the applicant has two choices. Either you include liner uses on the second and third level, or you set the building back the 85 feet. And what the definition specifies is that in terms of liner uses and the set of liner uses that you could have in any project,
We have the definition there.
when that liner use is on the ground floor, it must be retail. It can't be a walk-up residential unit, although frankly, I would not see a problem with that, but that's the way the code is written. This is not to say that liner uses on the second and third level become some,
False facade.
I don't know, so a false facade. That's not what this says.
Exactly.
The key word is use, I
It's
think.
use. There's a use.
The definition is ambiguous.
Could it have been, absolutely, the definition is ambiguous, and that's why we will gladly take your comments to the director.
And I think that, if I may dovetail that, the best cue, again, a clue into this was it would be the existing active uses of Midtown. Midtown was consciously designed with active second level liner, not just false facade work. And I believe that if Walmart wants to fit in, they're well within their capacities architecturally to do it. It's more expensive, really, but we understand that's the real impetus here,
We
not
will gladly
interpretation of the
take
code.
all comments because we think we're valid, and your review and comments are certainly welcome.
I mean,
But we
if you,
just want to make sure to put on the record that in fact it was not missed.
but I think it's not even ambiguous. To me, it's, really, it's clear. Liner uses defined. First two words, building uses. It doesn't say and/or facades, and/or decorative treatments, and/or screens. It doesn't say that.
Yep.
Building uses that serve to conceal uses such as parking garages and service areas. That is very, very clear. Then it just further defines that when that is on the ground floor, it shall be retail. It doesn't say that, well, on the second level floors, you can forget about it. So, I beg to differ. I think it's clear. It has been applied by the applicant in a different way. For whatever reason, maybe you all don't think it's that clear and it's kind of like snuck in there through a crack. But, we're here for a purpose.
Absolutely.
With you, which is to read the code and make sure that the intent is followed, adhered, celebrated. And, like Fidel said, this is a very, very important project. If there's a project that could set examples and do things right and really excel, is this one. But in every area, they're kind of like cutting back. and trying to see, that's the feeling I get.
We're not in disagreement with you.
How much can we get away with? That's not right. That's not right. All of these things were done for a purpose, and Fidel, I think if they wanted to, they could go back
Would have done it.
and resolve these issues, so I'm willing to come back on a third and a fourth time, but I still maintain my point in terms of how I'm reading the code. I don't believe I'm incorrect.
Mr. Chair, one more question. With respect to the entrance into the parking garage close to 29th Street, I'm not sure whether or not it's 300 feet from the intersection of 29th and North Miami Avenue. Is there a turn lane going in from North Miami Avenue into the backside of the Walmart? I'm looking at page 0101B.
What was the square footage that was it 250,000 square feet?
On the previous plan, you did not have an entrance into the parking garage from this location. I'm just curious as to whether or not we're going to be cutting another curb going into.
This entrance has been shown from the initial submittal. Go ahead.
It was there?
It was there.
Yeah, John McWilliams with Kimlee Horn and Associates. Yeah, that entrance was there in the previous submittal. North Miami Avenue is a county facility, and we've had extensive conversations with the county about the location and design of that driveway. And our conversations with the traffic engineering division indicated that they would like to see a right turn lane, but if one cannot be accommodated within the right-of-way, that they would find not having it acceptable. The intent of that driveway is really to try to relieve as much of the vehicular traffic coming down 31st as much as possible. Let's intercept them before they get into the district and get them up into the garage so we can reduce those pedestrian conflicts towards Midtown Boulevard.
So you will only be taking them coming from downtown, I guess, going in?
It will be a right in, right out. So you could actually still egress the site through that driveway, but you'd have to head north.
Gotcha.
16,000 square.
Yeah, 16. Yeah, they're under.
Mr. Bayo, may I respond to Mr. Bermeo?
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to walk us through what the code says. And I know that it's a matter of interpretation, and Mr. Bermeo can have a different interpretation from mine. However, when you go to 627.2.12, which is the operative section, it says that liner uses are generally required on parking garages that front primary streets.
Which we are.
Which we are.
We are.
Then it says, when required, ground level parking facilities must be lined with active uses. That's the ground floor.
Yeah.
Active uses are meant.
We're not debating the ground floor.
But when you then go to the definitions of active uses and liner uses, it's fairly clear from those definitions that they don't mean to require active participations in the second line.
Sure they do. A liner use is active by its very nature. If not, it would not say uses. It would be saying facade or decorative treatments or screens.
But yet, when we go to the definition of active uses, it says an active use is any use that provides the public entrance from the street. And I think they mean it to be
That's not in the definition of liner uses. You're picking and choosing.
No, active uses. That's the definition of
liner uses. The definition was just read by staff.
Correct.
It's referring to building uses.
No, I was referring, you said active uses are, and I said there's a definition.
Liner uses.
Correct.
Right, liner uses.
Well, at least that's the way we read the code. I think staff agreed with that reading of the code. We would really appreciate it if you could find it in your deliberations to actually recommend the project or at least send it forward with your comments, conditions, so that we can move the problem. We've been working close to 2 years with staff, the public, and others on this project, and you know, it's been an issue at every level. This issue we thought was not an issue, that we did not need to have a variance for this issue. In fact, we wanted to present a project that had no variances whatsoever.
You can still do that.
Well, we can do that, but we also don't want to have to meet code requirements that aren't there and that our opposition hasn't ever met, and that our competitors haven't met. So that's what we are. But
that's not correct. There have been liner uses even before Miami 21. Miami 21 just formalized, institutionalized the concept of providing active liners on every floor. Usually on the upper floors, it was residential or office. Retail always on the ground floor. That's always been the concept.
If you did a survey and asked, you know, all of 1,000 architects across the United States, okay, what is a liner building and what is a liner use, they'll give you exactly the same definition that Mr. Bermeo is working with. Notion is that it, in fact, is a use that is on the front of that garage. It's not a screen. It's not, you know, a piece of canvas hiding the cars. It is an active use. It's eyes on the street. Right? And it's in fact creating, it's not architectural decoration, okay? Which is what we're getting here.
The first one that I recall, we did ourselves in Coconut Grove on our building along Tiger Tail. We had two options. We could set back the parking garage an additional 50 feet, or we could put townhomes. We selected to put townhomes. It's a liner building. It has people living in it instead of you're looking at a garage. We had the option of putting landscaping and setting the garage back. You guys are not doing it. You had the ability to take that liner building that you have on the ground floors retail and keep it going all the way up. And there'll be no, that item will be off the table today, but you don't have that.
Because that was, I mean, you're asking us to either move the project forward or go back. You're getting the consensus, how the board feels. If the project's, in my opinion, and we'll let the rest of the board decide, if it's going to go forward, it's going to go forward probably, from what I see, a negative recommendation. So it's up to you, really, at this point, if you want to try to go back, try to incorporate very, very valid comments that this board is giving you again.
May I, sir?
We actually would prefer to move forward. There would be conditions to why you voted against us, and we would have the opportunity to work with staff going forward with this project to correct those, but truly we're just at a point where the project's just taking way too long.
May I, sir?
Very quickly, please.
Very quickly, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to point out that unlike in the law, sir, in architecture, precedent is set in stone. And further north on Miami Avenue, the North Block retail portion of Midtown Miami is lined with second floor uses, okay? Even if it would be feasible to come up with a new reading of the code, it would not match the rest of Midtown Miami, and the mistake would be embedded in stone for decades to come. I'm very disappointed with the tone of staff who, as they admitted today, are going for a change that would be against the architectural definition of liner use. The fact that the staff of the city of Miami is biased and taking sides, going for...
Please, refrain from...
I'm sorry, it's very disappointing, sir.
We're not going to get anywhere, and that's not a fair statement. And for the record, I want to tell you that, in my opinion...
Very well, I strike the statement, sir, but I would like to conclude that this is a flawed project that does not meet the Midtown Miami guidelines whatsoever. Okay. There are two projects being submitted, and they are not being given equal consideration as separate or as a whole. Because of the ambiguity, because of the obvious problems, I would strongly request that the board reject this application.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carmen?
What I really have to say is that each and every day, this staff, a professional staff, looks at many, many projects. At no time do we have a bias. We have received projects from everyone who sits on this board, as the architects, as the developers, and wearing many, many hats as you all do. At no time, sir, does the planning department make a preference from one project to the other, pushes one through over another. We simply apply the rules as we see them based on the project merits. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go back to the board. Do I have a motion here? We know how the applicant feels.
What are we looking to do? Are we asking them to go back and address the idea of the liner
Mr.
on?
Hall, they're asking us, they'd rather go forward, which whatever our recommendation will be,
Then to come back,
rather than come back. They want to, from what I understood Mr. Gonzalez said, they want to move forward.
okay,
That's
so-
correct, and you can make it a condition that we have to meet, and we have to work with staff in order to meet what you want, but we really would like to move the project along.
But that entails that you may get a recommendation
to come back.
or a recommendation of not approved,
Yeah.
you know?
You can have a recommendation of approval subject to whatever conditions you want, or of denial that says that if we meet the following conditions, then the project would be acceptable.
A question for staff is the recommendation from us would be either approval with conditions or denial. Am I correct? Denial, and for whatever reasons we're not approving the project.
That's correct. It would be approval with condition, or denial.
Okay. Thank you.
Can we deny with reasons?
Sure.
Yes.
Then only because everything that I'm hearing, if Al would have said, Mr. Chairman, give us another 30 days and we'll come back satisfying your requirements, which they would need to do anyway. Because what does it mean to go forward in this case? That they're going to go forward with a series of conditions and an approval, but they really have no intention of addressing them later?
Unfortunately, it's for the recommendation. only.
So since his, and I've known for many years, so Al, hopefully we'll still be friends today. What I read from him is something different, which motivates me to say that if I were to make a motion, I would make a motion today to deny, even though it bothers me making that motion because I would like to see great projects in great cities, and this can be a great project. So I don't want to send the message that we're anti-having a Walmart in Midtown, because I don't think that is at least that's not my intent. Just like it's not my intent to open the door to have our staff criticized. But having said that, I will make a motion to deny the project.
Mr. Gonzalez, before that motion is made, you sure you don't want to try to come back, try to work with staff? Because I do too would hate to make that, vote on some denial.
We hear you, and we would, under most circumstances, want to come back, but this project's just taking way too long. We have contractual obligations that require us to move forward. So as much as I would like to have the support of this board and the support of Mr. Romeo, I just simply have to move it along, or else I have contractual issues that come up.
Okay, Mr. Romeo?
So my motion will be that we, as the UDRB board, recommend to the planning director that the planning director deny this application for two following reasons. The applicant's failure to comply with Miami 21 with respect to the liner uses on both North Miami and Midtown Boulevard on the second and third level. And furthermore, failure of the applicant to address the rooftop parking screening consistent with Miami 21.
Second.
We have first and a motion and second.
I'm calling roll. Mr. Bejar?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Bermejo?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Marston?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
So, 6-0.
Okay.
The project is denied.
Okay. Well, that will conclude the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Chair, I have one comment. Have nothing to do with the application, but is there any way that we can pursue the commission to make this board,
Not a recommendation board, but a more enforceable.
a forcible board? I mean, this is like, we can say whatever, and we have no power.
Mr. Perez, I have tried that. I've made those comments, and I used the example of the Board of Architects from the city of Coral Gables as the example, but unfortunately, it requires a modification to the statute and all. So,
Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, could I make a second motion that we ask the planning staff to work with the planning director to further clarify the exact intent of liner uses so that we will not have this confusion again?
I think it's a very good motion.
I concur.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, that
Thank
would greatly help us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.